Hi, everybody. My name's Zachary Edwards, and I'm here to give a case analysis for my Business Law 1 class on the case The Joneses versus Star Credit Corporation. I will present this case in two main points. I'll provide a company profile on Star Credit Corporation, and then I'll summarize and analyze the legal issues and court decisions around the case. Star Credit Corporation was a consumer finance company operating in the mid-20th century. Its main business model involved providing credit for retail purchases through installment plans, which basically means that they provided financing for household goods for customers who weren't able to afford them up front. The company partnered with door-to-door retailers like Your Shop at Home Services, Inc., offering customers products such as refrigerators or freezers, but at very high credit markups. This means that while low-income customers were able to access these products right away, most of Star Credit's income was coming from insurance and credit charges and time price differentials rather than the products themselves. Now let's look at an example of how this works. The freezer at the center of the case. The freezer's market value was $300. The cash price was $900. But after adding insurance, sales tax, and credit charges, the final total jumped up to $1,234.88. This means that the gross margin of the sale was over 300%, and that most of Star Credit's income was coming from these added-on credit charges, not the products themselves. While this made the short-term profits of the company very strong, it also exposed the company to legal and ethical risks from developing contract laws focused on consumer protection that were being created at the time. In this case, Clifton and Cora Jones, a low-income family on welfare, bought the freezer from Star Credit Corporation under a credit agreement. They had already paid more than $600, which was double the freezer's market value, yet Star Credit Corporation still demanded another $819.81 in payments. The Joneses argued that the contract was unconscionable, that it was so unfair that it shocked the conscience of the court. The court had to decide whether such a high price, combined with the buyer's lack of bargaining power, made the contract unenforceable. The main law at the center of this case was UCC, or Uniform Commercial Code, Section 2302, which allowed courts to reject the enforcement of contracts or specific clauses of contracts that were found to be unconscionable at the time they were made. Unconscionability has two main parts. Procedural unconscionability, which means that there are issues with the structuring of the contract, like a high-pressure sale or a lack of understanding on the part of the buyers. And then there is substantive unconscionability, which means that the terms of the contract itself are so harsh or one-sided, like an extreme overpricing. In Jones versus Star Credit, the court found both. They found that the Joneses had been given a take-it-or-leave-it sales pitch, and that also the sales price was outrageously inflated. Now, when it comes to the arguments of the two sides, the Joneses said that the price was exploitative and violated fairness standards under the UCC. As welfare recipients, they had no real choice, and they didn't really understand the long-term costs of the contract. Meanwhile, Star Credit Corporation argued that the Joneses had voluntarily signed the contract and that the high price was a reflection of credit risk and financing costs, not of unfairness. Star Credit Corporation argued that the courts should not interfere with what they called freedom of contract. The New York Supreme Court, Nassau County, ruled in favor of the Joneses. Judge Sol Watler found the contract unconscionable because of the extreme price markup and the buyer's economic vulnerability. The court let Star Credit Corporation keep the $619.88 that had already been paid, but barred it from collecting the remaining $819.81. This ruling limited the contract rather than canceling it entirely, an approach that blended fairness with contract enforcement. I personally agree with the decision of the court. It is both fair and practical. The Joneses still paid more than twice the value of the freezer, but the Star Credit Corporation didn't lose its investment, but the ruling prevented the company from exploiting vulnerable consumers in the future. This case set an important precedent in that it showed that UCC Section 2302 can be used to protect consumers from extreme overpricing, even without evidence of fraud. It reminded businesses that profitability cannot come at the expense of fairness, and that freedom of contract has limits when the power is unequal. In my opinion, Jones versus Star Credit Corporation strengthened public trust in contract law by drawing a clear line between legitimate business and predatory lending. Star Credit Corporation's short-term financial success through high-interest credit sales ultimately backfired when its practices violated legal and ethical boundaries. This case teaches us that sustainable business growth depends not only on profit margins, but also with compliance with consumer protection laws and ethical responsibility. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope that you found this analysis both insightful and relevant into how business law continues to shape fair commerce today.